This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern, and today's interview is being recorded in front of a live audience here at the 2016 Limud Conference in Birmingham, UK. My guest today is a Talmud scholar and historical fiction writer who recently ventured into non-fiction writing with her latest book entitled 50 Shades of Talmud, What the First Rabbis Had to Say About You-Know-What. Maggie Anton, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hello, Gilad. I cannot even tell you how pleased I am to be here. I'm a native of Los Angeles, so I've schlepped all the way from Los Angeles to Birmingham. And it has been amazing.
Is it your first Limud?
Actually, it's my third Limud, but my first UK. And this year I did New York Limud, I did Bay Area Limud, and I'm at the granddaddy of them all.
Absolutely.
UK. There's so many people here, it is astonishing, not only the noise level, but the energy level, the intellectual level.
Yeah, it is definitely highly recommended to all you millions of listeners out there. Not quite so much, but all right. So let me ask you this, Maggie. Is the abundance of sexual references in the Talmud something that struck you from your first encounter with it, with the text? Do we need parental advisory notice when opening the Talmud?
Oh, definitely. And not just because of the sexual references. But the rabbis, first of all, the rabbis have a lot to say about sex because they have a lot to say about everything. I mean, the Talmud is a bookcase full of books. The rabbis explore every subject. But the first mitzvah, according to the rabbis and to the Torah in Bereshit, be fruitful and multiply. And, now in modern times, you can have medical interventions, but for the vast time of human history, in order to be fruitful and multiply, you have to have sex. So God is essentially commanding men and women to have sex. Like they needed the commandment, they wouldn't do it, but God commands them to do it. So the rabbis, of course, this is the first mitzvah, they have to talk about it. And interestingly, despite the fact that the section in Bereshit obviously applies to Adam and Eve, the commandments in the plural, the rabbis, in an amazing feat of Talmudic logic and pilpul and finagling the text, they exempt women from procreation. They say only men are commanded to procreate. Think about that. Only men need to be commanded to have sex. You might think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But the rabbis actually did a very wonderful thing for women when they exempted them from procreation because it freed women to use contraceptives. The rabbis did not like the idea that, especially in those days, so many women died in childbirth. How could God command women to do something that would end up killing them?
Yep. So
when the rabbis exempted women, it means they can use contraceptives. The Talmud has lots of contraceptives. They talk about sterilizing potions, permanent sterilizing potions, temporary sterilizing potions. They give you recipes. And what's even more important for today is how progressive the rabbis were. Not only are women absolutely permitted to use contraceptives, they don't have to ask their husband's permission. They do not even have to tell their husbands they are doing it. And I come from America. We do not have that reproductive rights freedom in America that Talmudic women had 1,500 years ago.
Yeah, well, why do you think that the monotheistic religions split in this way? Why is Judaism so liberal on that, in that aspect, and Christianity isn't, clearly?
Christianity, I'm no expert on Christianity, so I don't even want to begin to understand them. But for them, celibacy was the way to go. According to them, Jesus didn't have a wife. I mean, we don't know. But according to them, he didn't, and therefore that is the ideal. And of course, then all the priests and church fathers are saying they should be celibate. Whereas Judaism, also partly in response, but commanded to be fruitful and multiply. How can you decide to, violate God's law and God's word and be celibate?
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the letter of the law, as it were. Why do you think the rabbis of the Talmud had to engage with this issue at such length? As you said, this is something that is so ingrained in us. It's a biological urge that really, other than, what else can you say about it?
Well, first of all, the rabbis have to engage on the subject of sexuality for several reasons. First of all, it's a mitzvah, to procreate, but also we have averas sins that involve sex, adultery being the big one, but also incest. And so this being the rabbis in the Talmud, they can't just say, okay, adultery is forbidden. Yes, we have it in the Ten Commandments. They have to define what exactly is adultery. What act constitutes this, that if two witnesses see a man and a woman doing it, because the penalty is death. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to send someone to be executed unless they have very carefully defined what is the crime, what exactly do they have to be doing. And the rabbis get quite clinical about what exactly the sex act is. And I do it are children listening to this podcast? But anyway, quite explicit. They have to discuss that because they don't want people executed for something they didn't do. But also we have in the Talmud you can call it hypothesis, belief, that the quality of a child is proportional to the sex act that conceives that child. The better the sex, the more pleasure for the men and the women, the better the child that comes out of that union. The corollary is also true, that bad sex makes for bad children.
Mm-hmm. Did they actually spell it out?
They did.
Mm-hmm.
And the rabbis not only spell out what good sex is for the...
How do they spell out what good sex is? I can assure you the children aren't listening. Okay,
the rabbis say, in several different ways, that good sex is when the woman comes to orgasm first. Mm-hmm. And they find Torah quotes for this. The mighty men of Ulam had many great sons and grandsons. And the rabbis say, how did these men manage to control how many sons and grandsons they have? Because remember, even today men want sons, but particularly in those days, it was a very good thing to have lots of sons. And so how did the mighty men of Ulam do this? They restrained themselves when they were with their wives, and therefore the wives climaxed first, and the men had lots of sons. The rabbis have already concluded that if you want to have boys, the man should emit. Well, you don't want to have girls, but if the man emits seed first, it will be a girl. Child's gender is determined at conception. Yes, that's true. But the way the rabbis describe it, they don't know for medicine. But they do say, if the wife emits seed first, it will be a boy. If the husband emits seed first, it will be a girl. Thank you very much, rabbis, because now men have this big incentive to make sure that their wives climax first. Yeah. And in case the men weren't sure how to do that, the rabbis tell you, restrain yourself. And then the rabbis also know that some men can't restrain themselves. And they say there's another way, and that's to do it twice in a row. That the woman will be so aroused by the first act, she will surely climax first during the second act, and then you will have sons. But and they say simultaneous orgasm could be girl, could be boy. You're off the hook.
Oh, yeah, okay. So every possible scenario is addressed. Is there anything that they say about the act itself, about the biology and the anatomy of the sexual intercourse that we later found out to be true with the advent of modern medicine? Were they prescient in any way 15,000 years ago? 1,500 years ago?
Well, what they did know that women had orgasms, and they describe it quite accurately, what we would agree. What, of course, they didn't know, they assumed, of course, when a man is having an orgasm, he emits seed, they can see it. They assumed that the woman emitted seed when she had an orgasm, and that is different than what the quote, scientific belief was. The Greek and Roman, everybody else believed that the entire human little teeny baby is from the man. the woman only supplies the womb for the child to grow
overhead,
in.
yeah.
But the whole thing of the child comes from the man, and the rabbis disagree. They say there are three parents, three parents in the production of a child. The man has his seed, and he provides the black matter, the black of the eye, and the hair, and other kinds of parts. The woman provides her seed. They were right that women provide seed. It's not just everything from the man. And the woman provides all the red matter, the blood, the heart, those kinds of things. And the third partner is God. The God provides the white part, the white of your eyes and your teeth. And also then God provides your intellect, your soul. And it's a very beautiful piece of Talmud about the three partners in a human being.
Absolutely.
Which I would say is correct.
Well, were they entirely unabashed about it? Was
Absolutely.
it very straightforward? No sort of contrition?
No.
Any kind of... No.
First of all, the rabbis who are having this discussion have no idea that they're making Talmud. They have no idea that this is going to be canon, 500 years, 1,000 years later. They're just, talking.
Fooling around with the boys.
They're talking. They're talking with each other. I mean, there's places in the Talmud where the rabbis discuss and compare the size of each other's penis. And believe me, I'm sure they never thought anybody else was going to see that part. And so there are some parts of Talmud that even I am too embarrassed to say out loud. I did put them in 50 Shades of Talmud, but I never read those sections out loud. You'll have to read it. I'm not going to go there, but I'll just tell you that one of the ways that a woman can divorce her husband is if he is impotent. And that, of course, then the rabbis have to discuss, well, what does that mean? And also, not just impotent with her. Maybe he doesn't like her, so that doesn't count. He has to be generally, under all circumstances, impotent. You would think they would say, okay, let's bring in some harlots and we'll test him. That's not how they do it. I'm not going to tell you how they do it because it's...
All right, you'll have to read the book then. Why do you think is it back in the day when it was written, it was so... You said that they didn't think it was going to be out in the open, but once it's been canonized, why are religious people, rabbis, people who come from rather conservative milieu, don't engage with that kind of material in a more straightforward way today?
Well, I think today most people are embarrassed and feel awkward. I mean, how many...
No, but they have the excuse of having it in the scriptures.
Talmud is vast. They can find lots of other sections of Talmud to discuss and to teach without ever getting to any of the parts about sexuality. I mean, I've talked to various rabbis and yeshiva students from lots of places, and nobody studies these texts in rabbinic school or the yeshiva. They rank up there with the texts on demons and incantations and sorcery. Nobody studies those either. They kind of want to pretend they're not there. And even in Daf Yomi, there was... I didn't do Daf Yomi for 7 years, but when the last section of Daf Yomi completed a few years back, I thought I should see what this is. I'm gonna try, especially because the last tractate is Nida. So I thought, okay, I will do Daf Yomi for as long as it takes to do that one tractate. And I did it online in several places. And to my astonishment and dismay, imagine in Tractate Nida there's going to be stuff about sex. They just skipped over those parts. They didn't do the entire daf. They just, okay. It's like, wait a second, I'm looking at the page. Yeah. You just missed this section here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Nida, yada, 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 and over to other things. We have a bit of time for questions from the audience. Has anyone got one?
You didn't warn them in advance. They should prepare questions.
Well, I like to surprise them. Yes, please, come forward.
Is the book on sale? Yes. The book is in the bookstore. £5.
All right. Any other questions?
I didn't pay her to ask the question.
All right, and it's also available on Amazon and for order online. Yes, please.
To what extent, if at all, did you look outside of Talmud at responsa Do you know much about how this played out in response down the years? Any of those issues, or did communities just never ask this kind of thing of their rabbis?
I did not check the responsa. I had enough time on the Talmud is vast. I have enough problems just trying to find all the sections in Talmud. And I find there was something actually that I knew was in there and I couldn't find, and it took me a while to find it, about homosexuality. So the third printing is slightly different. We added another section, but to have to go to the responsa also would take the rest of my life.
There's an idea for another book. All right. Maggie Anton, a Talmud scholar and historical fiction writer, as well as a non-fiction writer, the author of the recently published 50 Shades of Talmud, What the First Rabbis Had to Say About You-Know-What. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It is certainly my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And to the Van Leer Institute for their generous support. If you like this podcast, there are many more where it came from. Just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick. Our co-host, Daria Shandlin, will be back with us shortly, but in the meantime, don't forget to visit our new website, telavivreview.org, like us on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter. Join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review, and until then, goodbye.